and this is tier one areas, mind you, between 650 a barrel for cash LOE, up to the records I was able to pull off the public stuff. For tier one, peaks at a little bit less than $10 a barrel for some other operators. So you're in that range of 650 to 10 right now for tier one. I would say, looking out, I would probably put a 6 to 8% escalation on that over the coming years, just because of the water volume, not because of any other thing.
Got it. And in terms of drilling and completion costs, how do you see those costs going forward?
I've predicted them to stay pretty flat. They've got a good steady state there between drilling contractors and 50. They're running between 55 and 60 rigs running. It depends on the winter, summer. Obviously rig count is going down in the winter during the severe months, but they're running in that range, 55 to 60 rigs. That's been pretty steady for the last 12 months, and I think it will continue. Many of the operators, the big boys, the most active ones, have also locked in long-term contracts on the rigs. They're not spot rates. They did that to keep the drilling rig contractors from running away from the Bakken and heading to the Permian during that demand, crush down there. So they've got things pretty stable there, I believe. Now, the variable that's happening is that some of the operators are experimenting with different types of frac designs. There was a push initially to go to the what we call the high intensity, the big sand volumes. Some of the operators have found that actually that didn't work very well, and they've cranked that back a little bit. So what fluctuation I see in total well cost is going to be the hims and haws with the fine tuning of some of the frac designs here. And also, to be frank, is at the mercy of what proppant costs. Northern White sand, for example, and how much that is impacted by frac sand demand in the Permian and the Scoop Stack and other areas. I don't see the physical drilling days and those costs. They've probably a little bit of room there. Maybe they're running about 10 days to drill the wells now. Maybe they'll get it down to 9. It's not earth-shattering. I don't see the drilling aspect of the cost changing much, but the completion could be affected by frac design, sand cost, and to what extent I don't know yet, but the steel tariffs and getting casing and tubing.
Got it. And I guess as we talk about tier one and tier two, I guess what would you consider the tier one areas versus the tier two?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have a map handy, or if you have any.
You have maps?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I'm looking at one of the investor ones that maybe is a really good one to clue you in on. Let's see here. Maybe Continental's got the best map right now in their package. But anyway, back to you basically focused around Mountrail. Effectively, you're along the Missouri River there. That erratic border of the counties there is really the core area of the Bakken. So yeah,
we're kind of looking at I guess the different counties. The
western Mountrail, northern
southwest Mountrail,
right.
Southeast Williams, northeast McKenzie, and
right.
the north Dunn.
Yeah,
your draft circle and hit all those.
Dunn is just the corner there of Dunn, the northwest corner, and you've also things are looking a little bit better. It's tier 2 now, but I think we're going to start seeing the tier 1 quality move westward over the state line into Montana. So that would be Roosevelt County, basically, and even in the northeast corner of Richland County, Montana. So I see that if there's an expansion because of LOE costs, et cetera, and G&A costs, I see it heading that direction.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. But your real core areas there are Dunn, Montreal, into McKenzie, of course, and Williams. That's the bulk of it.
Got it. And how much variability is there kind of within those different counties? Is it, in some other plays, it seems like, you have to see not just within the county of where you're at. This is pretty well delineated play. Is it fairly even across those regions?
Yeah, the way you got to think of the variability here is whether or not you've got the upper Bakken, middle, lower. Each of those are distinct reservoirs, and Spanish Fork. So the variability depends on the layer and how it may change. So you may drop in the core areas from having 4 very clear, distinct horizontal targets, dropping down to 3 or so because of quality. So as you go farther westward, the middle Bakken becomes a little bit better, and the upper begins to thin out, for example. So it's tweaking of the layers, but they exist across that core area. But there is some variability on a layer by layer basis, not the total. So, or said another way, if you were to measure vertical, quality reservoir, it might go in that core area some areas of 400 plus feet of vertical targets down to 325 or so. So it's not a huge change in quality is the short answer to your question.
Oh, that's helpful. I guess as some additional background on what we're looking at, it's a strategy around acquiring non-op locations, and so it's more of for us thinking more of a macro of the Bakken and the producers that are in the basin. Do you see them as, is this core to what they're doing, or if something gets if oil prices fall to the back into the 50s, is this something that becomes non-core to them, even though it's still economic?
Yeah, that's good. Let's kind of run through the top operators there and talk about each one then individually. And know kind of in order of size, but not particularly. But the biggest one in terms of acres is Continental, and of course, they were one of the granddaddies there. And it is a core area, but I would characterize it as particularly core from a cash flow, because they have expanded into the SCOOP play in Oklahoma. And it appears to me their strategy is to harvest free cash flow to an extent off of the Bakken and redeploy it, from a development exploration standpoint in the SCOOP. And the remainder of the cash flow, the harvesting, is being returned to shareholders via buybacks, et cetera. So it is very much a core, but they've also expanded out.
Maybe we shouldn't expect them to, start plans for drilling new locations, but more of just.
Yeah, and they don't. The other way to look at these companies too, and I'll talk about each one where the data is available. There's a term we call HBP, held by production.
Yep.
Are you familiar with that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Well, in the case of Continental, 90% of that 800,000 acres is HBP. So they have no time, stress, etc. I mean, it's very low obligation to drill to hold acreage. They basically can be very selective and drill what they want on an economics-only basis, highest return. And of that 800,000 acres, if I look at it visually, and this is very rough, of course, not scientific engineering done, but